Yes, guys. So I'm back. Now we'll discuss about irrigation. Okay. So, um, so water needs to be applied to crops in the exact amount and on time. So irrigation is the artificial supply of water to crops for the purpose of agricultural production. There can be various artificial means to supply water like canals, wells, tube wells, tanks, etc. which transport water from various different sources like rivers, ponds, or underground water. Remember, 54.6% of population is engaged in agriculture and allied activities by the census 2011, and it contributes to 17% of country's gross value added. Now, what is the need for irrigation? In the next 35 to 45 years, world food production will need to double to meet the demands of increased population. If rainfall decreases to less than 30 centimeters, agriculture becomes impossible without irrigation. Now, India's rainfall pattern suffers from both spatial as well as temporal variations, and it is also known for its uncertainty, irregularity, unreliability, and erratic nature. Now, crops like rice, jute, sugarcane, etc., they need more water, which can be fulfilled only through irrigation. New and high yielding seeds need additional water through irrigation for higher productivity. Agriculture provides employment to more than 50% of India, so we need to reduce the risk associated with agriculture and increase its productivity. Now, what are the different types of irrigation systems? In India, the irrigated area consists of 36% of net sown area. In general, the goal is to supply the entire field uniformly with water so that each plant has the amount of water it needs, neither too much nor too little. Now, we will classify the irrigation system based on source. Now, depending on the way irrigation water is conveyed to the head or upstream point of a field, irrigation system can be categorized as following. First is the tank irrigation. Now, a tank is a water storage system which is developed by constructing a small bund of earth or stones built across a stream. Ratio of tank irrigated land to total irrigated land of the country has reduced from 14% in 1960 to 61 to 44.6% in 2000, primarily because of increase in well and tube well irrigation and partly also due to the fall in tank irrigation. Now, the areas where tank irrigation is prevalent is in peninsular areas in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka Plateau, Eastern Madhya Pradesh, Eastern Maharashtra, Interior Orissa and Kerala. Now, outside the peninsular plateau, in West Bengal, Bihar, Bundelkhand area of UP, Rajasthan, Gujarat. Now, tank irrigation is popular in peninsular plateau due to undulating relief and hard rock makes it difficult to dig canals and wells, and little percolation of rainwater due to hard rock structure and groundwater isn't available in large quantity. And most of the rivers of this region are seasonal and they dry up in summer season. So they can't supply water to canals throughout the year. Now, there are many streams which become torrential during rainy season. Only way to make best use of this water is by building tanks. Otherwise, this would go waste to the sea. Now, also scattered nature of population and agricultural fields also favors tank irrigation. Now, what are the merits of tank irrigation? Most tanks are natural and they don't involve heavy cost for their construction. And tanks are generally constructed on rocky bed and have longer lifespan. In many tanks, fishing is also carried on, thus supplementing both food resources and the income of farmer. Now, what are the demerits of tank irrigation? Many tanks dry up during the dry season and they fail to provide irrigation. Also, silting of tank bed is a serious problem and it requires desilting at regular intervals. Also, much water is evaporated from the large expanse of shallow water and thus it is not available for irrigation. And lifting of water from tanks and carrying it to the fields is a strenuous and costly exercise. Now, we'll talk about the next slide, which is wells and tube wells. What is a well? A well is a hole dug in ground to obtain groundwater. An ordinary well is 3.5 meters deep. This method is being used since time immemorial. Now, what are the areas of well irrigation? It is more popular in regions where groundwater is plenty and where there are few canals. Large part of Great Northern Plain, deltaic regions of Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna and Kaveri, parts of Narmada and Tapi Valley. However, greater part of peninsular India isn't suitable for well irrigation due to rocky structure, uneven surface and lack of underground water. Large dry tracts of Rajasthan, adjoining parts of Punjab, Haryana, and Gujarat, and some parts of UP have brackish groundwater which is not fit for irrigation and human consumption and so unsuitable for well irrigation. Now we'll talk about tube wells. Tube well is a deeper well over 15-meter deep from which water is lifted with the help of a pumping set operated by an electric motor, a diesel engine or solar power. In several areas, Persian wheel earlier which was used to lift water has been replaced by tube well. Now, geographical conditions for installation of tube wells are there should be sufficient quantity of groundwater because tube well can irrigate 2 hectares per day while it is zero point 0.2 hectares per day for well irrigation. Water level nearly 15 meters. If more than 15 meters deep, cost of pumping out becomes uneconomical. Also, there should be regular supply of cheap electric or diesel, so water can be taken out at hour of need. And soil in immediate neighborhood should be fertile so that construction costs can be recovered. Now, what are the major areas under tube wells? More than three-fourths of them are in Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, UP, MP, Karnataka, and Punjab. Now, what are the merits of well and tube well irrigation? Well is the simplest and the cheapest source of irrigation. Well is independent source of irrigation and can be used when necessity arises, while canal irrigation is controlled by other agencies and can't be used at will. Excessive irrigation by canal leads to problem of ray, while not the case with well irrigation. There is a limit to the extent of canal irrigation beyond tail end, while a well can be dug at any place. And chemicals like nitrate, chloride, sulfate found mixed with well water add to the fertility of soil when they reach agricultural field from well. Farmers should pay regularly for canal irrigation while not for well irrigation. Also, it's reliable during drought when surface water dries up. Now, what are the demerits of well and tube well irrigation? Only limited area can be irrigated. A well can irrigate max 1 to 8 hectares. Well may dry up and rendered useless for irrigation if excessive water is taken out of it. And in event of drought, groundwater level falls and enough water is not available in well. Tube wells can draw a lot of groundwater from neighboring areas and make ground dry and unfit for agriculture. Well and tube well irrigation is not possible in areas of brackish groundwater, lack of electricity, diesel, and the requirement of capital investment for tube well. Now, we'll talk about canal irrigation. This used to be the most used source of irrigation up to 1960s, but in 1970s, wells and tube wells became most used source of irrigation, and now canals are the second most important source. This is effective in areas of low level relief, deep fertile soils, perennial source of water, and extensive command area. In northern plain of India, especially UP, Haryana, and Punjab, digging of canals in rocky and uneven areas is difficult and uneconomic. Thus, canals are practically absent from peninsula plateau area. However, coastal and delta regions in South India do have some canals for irrigation. Now, these canals are of two types. One is the inundation canals and the other one is the perennial canals. Now, what is inundation canals? Inundation canals taken out from rivers without any regulating system like weirs at their head provides irrigation mainly in rainy season when river is in flood and there is excess water. When rainy season is over, flood in river subsides, level of water falls below level of canal head and canal dries up. Examples, some canals taken off from Satluj in Punjab. What are perennial canals? They are taken off from perennial rivers by constructing a barrage across a river. Most of canals in India are perennial canals. Now, what is a barrage? Barrage is artificial obstruction placed in a river or water course to increase the depth of the water. Now, areas where canal irrigation is prevalent in northern plains of India, where UP, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Bihar account for about 60% of canal irrigated area of India. And in south and central India, AP, Maharashtra, Karnataka, MP, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, and TN. Now, what are the merits of canal irrigation? Most canals provide perennial irrigation and supply water as and when needed. This saves crops from drought conditions. Canals carry a lot of sediment brought down by rivers which is deposited in fields and adds to the fertility. Although initial cost involved in canal irrigation is much higher, it is quite cheaper in the long run. Now, what are the demerits of canal irrigation? Canal water soaks into the ground and leads to waterlogging along canal route. Excessive flow of water in fields raises groundwater level. Capillary action brings alkaline salts to surface and makes large areas unfit for agriculture. Vast areas in Punjab, Haryana, UP, and Maharashtra suffer from drought. Due to canal irrigation, marshy areas near canals act as breeding grounds of mosquitoes, which result in malaria. Many canals overflow in rainy season and flood surrounding areas. Canal irrigation is suitable in plain areas only. Now, what are the different types of irrigation systems based on delivery technique? First is the surface irrigation. Now, this is the common and the oldest methods of irrigation. This uses the force of gravity to distribute water, which then seeps into soil, also known as the flood irrigation, because it simply allows water to flow into an area. It can be divided into furrow, border strip, or furrow, border strip, or basin irrigation. It's not an efficient option because of tendency to use too much water in order to saturate land. Now, what are the advantages? It requires less manual labor than hose spraying or shifting hose sprinklers. It is better able to cover a large plot of land in a shorter amount of time, and it is not as negatively influenced by winds or sediments as other systems. What are the drawbacks? Potential overwatering and wasteful runoff due to frequent erosions. If soil lacks proper sloping or doesn't absorb readily, water can't move through field. Standing water can harm crops by reducing respiration of roots. Loss of water occurs due to percolation. Now, what is micro irrigation? Micro irrigation is defined as the application of water at low volume and frequent intervals under low pressure to plant root zone. Now, the types of micro irrigation are sprinkler irrigation, drip irrigation, subsurface irrigation, central pivot irrigation. Now, we'll talk about the sprinkler irrigation. Now, what is sprinkler irrigation? Method of applying water to land in a manner that mimics natural rainfall. Now, the water is distributed through system of pipes, usually by pumping, and it is then sprayed into air through sprinklers that break up water into small drops that uniformly fall to the ground. What are the advantages? It is suitable for varying sizes of land, both large and small plots, and it is better able to direct water flow to specific areas of a property, avoiding water loss, and ability to administer fertilizers and chemical treatments through the system even for even application. Now, what are the disadvantages? Initial cost is rather very high. Wind interferes with distribution pattern, reducing spread or increase application rate near lateral pipe. It often has trouble from clogged nozzle or failure of sprinklers to revolve, and it requires dependable construction supply of water free from slit and suspended matter, and it is suitable for high value crops. Now, what is drip irrigation? It is also known as trickle irrigation. Water is delivered at or near root zone of plants drop by drop. This method is most water efficient if managed properly, since evaporation and runoff are minimized. In modern agriculture, drip irrigation is often combined with plastic mulch, further reducing evaporation, and is also a means of delivery of fertilizer. This process is known as the fertigation. Now, what are the advantages? It saves time, money, labor, and water. It prevents fungal disease by minimizing water contact with leaves, stems, and fruits of plants. It discourages weed growth because water is only delivered where it is needed. It increases effectiveness on uneven ground and a high efficiency in use of fertilizer and no runoff of fertilizer into the groundwater. What are the disadvantages? Sensitivity to clogging, moisture distribution problems, salinity hazards, high cost compared to furrow, high skill requirement for design, install and operation. Now we'll talk about subsurface irrigation. Okay, now this is similar to drip or trickle method in that it distributes water through tubes and emitters, but in this method, tubes are buried below the surface of the ground. It was developed in 1960s in Israel where water tends to be scarce. This system works best for areas that are arid, hot, windy, or sandy soil types. What are the benefits? It saves water by eliminating surface water evaporation in hot and arid conditions. It reduces the number of weeds because water not on soil surface where most weed seeds germinate, and it also prevents damage from animals or machinery because system is below ground and prevents soil erosion which happens in a surface irrigation. Now, what center pivot irrigation. Okay, now this involves self-propelled system in which a single pipeline supported by a row of mobile towers is suspended 2 to 4 meters above the ground. Now, water is pumped into central pipe and the towers rotate slowly around pivot point. A large circular area is irrigated. Sprinkler nozzles mounted on or suspended from the pipeline distribute water under pressure as this pipeline rotates. Nozzles are graduated from small to large so that faster moving outer circle receives same amount of water as the slower moving ones on the inside. Now, what are the advantages? Uniformity of applied water, no human labor required, may operate at lower pressure, thus conserving energy. It reduces the opportunity for surface runoff or deep percolation. It provides opportunity for fertigation. What are the disadvantages? Relatively high capital cost compared to surface irrigation systems. It requires some form of energy source like electric or diesel to operate, not suitable for irrigation of fields of rectangular or square sheet. Now, now we'll talk about manual irrigation. Now, this has very low requirements for infrastructure and technical equipment, technological equipment, but it needs high labor inputs. Example, in rural areas and peri-urban areas, irrigation using buckets or watering cans. Now, in the next class, we'll continue the remaining stuff.